Welcome to Thrive in the Mess. I'm your host, Lisa Hutchcraft Whitmer. So, hey friend, welcome to Thrive in the Mess. I am really excited. I think I say that every time because I'm excited about my guests and my friends who I've had conversations with. And I am thrilled to have my friend Carolyn with me today. And we're going to kind of do a deep dive into how we see ourselves, just identity in a world that is just full of voices screaming about who I am and who I should be and what I should look like and what I should weigh and what I should wear and how I should talk and just all the things. I'm just really excited to have a friend who has journeyed through life and has some wonderful perspectives on just identity and who she is. And my friend Carolyn, welcome. Yay, I'm so happy
Thank
you're
you.
here.
I'm so excited to be here.
And I want to jump back to I know we're just going to kind of dive in because I know you grew up in Texas.
Yes.
I grew up in New Jersey, and you are a former Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. And I am a New York Giants fan, and somehow we are still friends. And a little side note is that my dad used to speak for some of the chapels for the Giants, and then they realized, some of the guys on the team realized, well, we win when he speaks. That's not the purpose. It's not a good luck charm. It was, a chapel to, encourage them in their spiritual walk in life. But they realized they would win when they beat Dallas. And so they would invite him for I think all the Dallas chapels for the New York Giants. So that was many years ago, but we are still friends. So even though we have
Yes.
it's the beautiful thing about when you can go beyond things that can cause division. So at least I think so. You might walk out now, but I don't know. But I want to jump back to that because, and maybe some of your stories start sooner than when you were a young adult, but just kind of jump in wherever about how you've seen yourself. And I know you now, I didn't know you then, but I know you've shared strands and pieces of your story from throughout life of how you saw yourself. And then even being in a very competitive industry, for lack of a better word, occupation, even with doing that and the pressures that puts on us with identity also. But jump in wherever you want,
Okay.
teenage, child,
Right.
1-year-old, wherever you want.
Yes. Well, I mean, without going into all the detail of why I even wanted to try out, I just, being raised in Texas and being from a family that were big Dallas Cowboys fans,
Right.
and of course
They may
Dallas,
not like me.
right?
They're going to be like, why were you with her? Oh, no, go ahead.
And fans of the cheerleaders and just that whole cultural thing that we were in Texas. And I grew up in dance and singing and performance and pageants and all of these kinds of things from the time I was pretty young. And so, long story short, my dream became to become a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. I mean, I always wanted to be in performance, but then as I kind of got a little bit older, I was starting to realize what all they did and just some of the exciting things they got to do and seeing them, on TV and all this kind of thing. Yeah. And
Can you still do a high kick? You don't have to demonstrate one today.
That is so funny. I can do a high kick, but I cannot jump up and land in the splits anymore.
Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, that's long gone.
How many times did you have to do that? Was that always a part of every game?
It was a part of every game because it was kind
the
of
jump up in splits?
Yes, it was kind of.
That's a little terrifying to me. I'd probably blow out 3 discs.
Oh, well,
Wow. Things we do when we're young.
When we're young, exactly.
I could do a low kick for you. If you keep going, I'm really interrupting your.
No, it's all good. But yeah, so it became my dream. And I put literally everything into this. I mean, it almost became like an obsession, really, because I was already in dance and all of that, in, all through school and all of that. But, I had kind of set my heart on this goal. And I was doing everything I knew to do to achieve this goal. I was in Sulphur Springs, Texas, which is 2 hours away from Dallas. But every week I would drive over, on school nights to the Cowboys headquarters and do like they had these prep classes that you could take,
okay.
And I would drive over there 2 hours one way and do all of that and then drive back and then go to school the next day. I mean, I was serious. I was
right,
driven
right.
about it. And, I was really strict like on my diet, not eating a whole lot actually. And very, every kind of beauty treatment you can think of, I was trying to do, just trying to fit the image of what they would hire. And then, of course, working on all the things you have to do to become one. So I was 18, because you have to be 18 to try out.
Okay, right.
And so I actually turned 18 the day before tryouts.
So you barely.
I barely squeaked through the door.
Wow.
But anyway, I was very, very laser focused on this is what I want to do, this is, what I have to do, I felt like. I mean,
This is all like in high school then too, since excuse me, since you just had turned 18, had you even graduated yet?
Not even graduated yet.
So
then my hometown kind of rallied behind me, which was very, I mean, when I look back on it, it touches my heart, really.
wow.
But all that to say, there was a lot of pressure too,
Right.
because I was thinking, okay, now I've got the whole community involved. And again,
thanks for the encouragement, but that also is the pressure, right?
And Texas football, Cowboys, all the thing. It's like, it's like a religion, honestly, in a lot of ways, because it's like, everybody knows every stat and every player and everything. And it's a big deal. So
do they quiz you on that part?
They do.
Really?
They do. That is so funny you asked that.
Wow.
That was part of the audition process.
You couldn't just
test.
like show up and do like the high kicks. It's like, I don't know why I'm obsessed with the high kick.
Right.
But yeah, wow. So you also had to like know the information too.
Did.
Interesting.
Yes. And
so there is a lot of pressure going into that.
It was, but so this is what happened though.
Oh no.
I know. So there's several rounds, you go through the preliminaries and then the semifinals and then the finals and so on. Well,
so this is over weeks or days?
Over a month's time.
Okay.
Yeah. And so once I made it all the way to the finals, where you're competing against the current veterans,
Oh, wow.
And
Talk
that
about
was
pressure
intimidating, very intimidating, and like everybody, the next one is more beautiful than the other. I mean, it's just like so many like beautiful people where you're just like, is this real? I mean,
everyone's doing the same beauty.
Everybody's doing the same. Yeah. Everybody's like hyper focused on, how you look and your performance and how you come across and just all of these things. So anyway, I made it to the finals, but I didn't make it into the training camp that year. Well, I was devastated, but the main thing I felt horrible about is I felt like I had disappointed my hometown.
Right.
And I was a dance teacher back then, and I had all these awesome students that were really
they were rooting for you
so
too,
excited, and I felt like I had let them down, and I felt like I let my family down, my everything.
Right.
I mean, and so I from that felt very I felt rejected, but I also felt like, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough.
Wow.
I didn't make I just don't have what it takes, because I've given everything I know to do and towards this goal, but I didn't make it,
Was that the first time?
First time.
You had that like, I'm not enough.
I don't know if I can say that.
But that was the big one.
It was a big one.
Okay.
But I think I had struggled with that, honestly, my whole life.
Wow.
Like always feeling like I've got to measure up to this standard that I really never could really measure up to.
And that just kind of was maybe a bigger thing that just kind of made it
Yes.
rise to the surface even more. That's a big wow.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Not enough. And how did you?
Yeah. So
How
I
did
did
that
not
hit everyday life?
I didn't deal with it very well at that time in my life. So I was raised in church, had a Christian family, and I'm very thankful for all of that. But I did not have a personal relationship with the Lord at that time. I mean, I knew a lot about him and I believed in him, but I didn't really know him.
That head knowledge,
Yeah.
but not necessary heart.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So at this point in time, it was just all about what the world is telling me. I wasn't tuning in to who does the Lord say I am. I wasn't at all. I mean, it was all about
You're like, I want to know what they think I am.
Right.
I just want to make
totally
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And taking my cues off of what I'm getting from the world, So fast forward, I graduate from high school, I go to college, I go and I'm a part of the dance team in the college. Well, so I'm like, do I try out again?
Yeah.
And I was very nervous to put myself out there again, but I thought, okay, have had another year of maturity and whatever.
And I've sadly given a spoiler alert that you are a former. So we kind of know you.
We already, we know it eventually.
But it's great to hear all that because those are hard moments. Like, am I going to try again? Like, how many times does anyone walk through life and we're like, okay, that's it, and I give up because I'm not enough. We just don't feel like we can do this. There have been even times with stepping into wanting to have a podcast and have conversations with people. And my husband has been like, Lisa, you're about to quit and you haven't even recorded anything. But sometimes we hear voices of, I'm not enough.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
And we have to come back to who God says we are. And I love how even in the Bible, God's word talks about we are made by him and made for him. And I am his and, things like that where we're unique and valuable and irreplaceable and priceless. And so, okay, but you're not feeling that right now at that point in time. So
I wasn't.
You're deciding.
But yes, so I'm in college. I decide to try again. And this time I have two friends that I went to college with that we were going to try out together, which I thought, oh, well, that's going to be better because at least I won't be all by myself, And so
it depends if you all make it or not.
Well, so this is a key part.
Oh,
this is a key part. So we go again, or I go again, and this was their first time. You're never going to believe this, but this is the absolute truth. My two friends made it, and I did not make it again.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
I know.
don't think. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was definitely, and especially I was 19 at this point.
Yeah. Another kick in the gut.
I just kept thinking. So then I started really questioning, of course, why do I even think that I should even be trying this? Why? Because I really, really wanted it and thought that I could do it, but obviously it wasn't happening, and I'm thinking, okay, I felt totally like a failure. I mean, I felt like I was ridiculous. Wow. I was like, what? Then I started getting into this, just really low thoughts of myself. But, I've come to realize now, years later, that pride kind of looks different. Sometimes pride is when we're super coming across really arrogant and all of that, but it can also be when we're still completely focused on ourselves, but it's all like, woe is me, and I'm so,
Wow.
Almost
like
I mean?
a victim.
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, yes, I know hard things happen, and I'm not saying that we don't, have to kind of process through that with the Lord, but it was still so self-focused at the time. It was just about me and what I thought and what I wanted and all of this kind of thing. Wow.
So, I quick question. Don't lose your thought there. But did you have any? Your friends made it. You didn't. Did that affect your relationship with them? Was there any kind of we're always telling ourselves, don't compare with each other because comparison just kills us, inside. And again, we're uniquely us. But were you like, oh, they, was there any just what were the feelings with that? Like, I don't know that you were bitter or, just was there anything like that's another little thread there? Like,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
made it. I didn't. Did I
Oh,
suggest it? I know
yeah.
she's
Right. No, I was definitely comparing myself and
Mm,
thinking that I was falling short. I wasn't enough. They were,
right.
obviously better and prettier and more talented and more and all of the
Yeah.
things. I mean, it was just very much like a poor me. I'm just feeling very rejected and very
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you would say to an extent jealousy, but it didn't affect our relationship because
Yeah.
they were very gracious, and I felt like I tried to be
I'm
gracious.
sure
We
they
stayed.
felt terrible.
Oh yeah,
It's like all for none. Okay, it's not all.
I know. No, we
Wow.
stayed friends, and that was
Wow.
fine. But it was definitely
Yeah.
a hard thing, especially at that age. I
Yeah.
mean, I just
Right.
felt very like I actually
19,
felt
right.
really humiliated is kind of the word. Kind of like, wow, I guess I
Yeah.
was really wrong on,
Thinking I was up
thinking I could
to.
even try this,
Did you get as far that time?
No,
Oh,
that's the other
wow.
thing.
So it probably
Even
depends year to
Oh
year.
my gosh, I digressed even.
Oh.
So this time I made it one level less. And so that was that was a
Oh,
good point.
wow.
That was another thing that was just like, wow.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of realize, okay, plan B, at this point. And really what happened is truly where I came to know the unconditional love of the Lord. Because I was sitting here feeling so rejected, so, whatever.
Right.
And he opened a door for me to move to Branson and become a performer in a Branson show,
Wow.
which was
Right.
not on my radar whatsoever. I mean,
You're thinking Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. That's right.
well, and I was in college down
Yeah.
there at TCU, and I mean, my whole family's from Texas. I mean,
Right.
I was not thinking at all about Branson,
Yeah.
but I had been hearing about it and that it was like an awesome place for a lot of shows and all kinds of opportunities. But anyway, it was truly, I believe, the Lord that opened the door for that.
Wow.
And I kind of look back and think he actually picked me up and carried me through that door.
Wow.
Because I was so low.
And you couldn't even walk through. Well, that's I really like how you just said that, because sometimes we do get to those moments where we're like, I can't do that. Like we've had a rejection, had another rejection, and not just another rejection, but a rejection where someone else had exception. Like that's not a word, but like they had been accepted.
Yeah.
It feels like you were rejected.
Right.
So that kind of probably stung a little more the second time. And sometimes we can't do that next thing. So it does take some perseverance, but sometimes we just can't do that, literally. God's the one who gives us strength, to do that. So, but again, you weren't kind of like you've said you weren't like you believed in God, all the things, but he still, even in those low moments, he kind of, it's like that Footprints poem of like God carrying us when we saw the one where like, well, God, you left me at that moment. You abandoned, and it actually was when he carried us. So, wow. That's powerful. So he carried you to Branson.
He did. Then, he really did, because he opened doors that I wasn't even knocking on. I mean, it was just really amazing, because once I moved here to Branson and started working in these shows and things, I mean, it took a minute to kind of
shift gears mentally.
Shift gears and kind of, but he blessed me so much. I mean, it was the best place that I can imagine for me to be. And so I kind of put college on hold, Yeah. And I was just like, let's, go for this, see what, all this is all about.
And you got to use your gifts and talents too. Going to Branson. You didn't have to stop.
No, not at all.
But did the thought stop that I'm not enough when you're doing shows?
Because
you're still like with other people who are really good and comparison and
well,
where did that take you mentally even some of that?
Well, because in any probably any job, I guess, really, but especially I think in maybe the entertainment industry and things like that, I mean, you are being contrasted and compared all the
Constantly,
time, constantly
right.
for the role, right? Like who's going to best fit this role? And at that time in my life, I would just completely rely on people to tell me my worth and value.
Wow.
Am I worth anything or not? Am I
Right.
worth, investing in or not? Like, am I valuable? Am I worth knowing? Am I worth loving? Am I worth anything? It was all based on what I thought people thought, instead
So
of.
when you didn't hear those voices, what was that like? And when you did hear those voices, what was that like?
Oh, it's like if anybody gave me a job or gave me affirmation of any kind or whatever, it was just like, oh,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's what I would feed on for that moment. But
Yeah.
as you know, that's so fleeting.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, it's like that. And then the next hour, you could be cut down.
Right.
So in other words, it was very like
Roller
roller
coaster. There
coaster
are roller
because
coasters in Branson. It's
yeah.
not the kind of roller coaster you want to be.
Yeah.
And plus, even our own mental doubts, like we can
Mhm.
hear incoming that's positive or negative, but then we also have our own, well, wait a minute, what they said this, but they didn't say anything about, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to think of like when we hear some affirmation, we might still question, but wait, just because we question ourselves or still have those niggling doubts,
Absolutely.
from ourselves or others who have put that in there. So then someone comes along or it says something negative or doesn't say anything. How did that roll with you? Besides
Oh,
taking you to the bottom,
yeah. Well, I would internalize it and I would believe it. Because
Wow.
if they're telling me that, it must be true,
Wow.
instead of, because at this point I didn't really understand my true identity in Christ. I just, again, I was kind of reliant on what people would say or do or think, about me. And I don't think I really knew what to think about myself because, I was just like, really just looking to like somebody to tell me,
Wow.
and that's kind of like every audition I would go to or every show or whatever, what would people say? What are people thinking? I mean, it was, and that's such a vulnerable place to be, just constantly looking for, people to give you that approval,
Am I enough?
Yeah.
Am I okay?
Yeah.
So you don't get apart.
Mhm.
How does that, like, do you just keep going after trying to find that next job, find that next whatever? And are you just like, okay, I didn't get it and just have to try harder? Or does it set you back everywhere you don't want to try again?
Definitely at times I would, kind of just be so feeling dejected or whatever that, I would have different times where, back then I would turn to guys, like, whoever I was dating or whatever. And,
That's a whole nother
that's
realm
a
of
whole nother.
getting affirmation and am I
Yes.
good enough? Am I
Yes.
right?
Or,
That's a great place to turn when you're looking
gosh.
for identity. Not
No,
but
not a good
I'm
idea.
not judging that. I'm just saying it's like, but that's what we do as humans. We
Absolutely.
go to other people with that. So how did that work out for you looking at, guys for that affirmation?
Oh, well, I mean, it was not a good idea
Right.
because, it led to being promiscuous. I mean, it wasn't like I was all over the town or anything,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was definitely
Right.
trying to find, that love and approval some way or another.
It's a natural response to
Yeah.
looking for. I've heard. My dad has even talked about looking for love in all the wrong places, but it's not just love; it's that affirmation,
Right.
because that feels like love to us. We want to be accepted. We want to feel like we're enough. Like that
Right.
is a big thing. I really like how that's kind of come to the forefront in some conversations nowadays about I don't feel enough, but we are enough. Just and honestly, when we don't feel enough, when we choose to look to God, He gives us that affirmation. You are because I made you uniquely you, and And that is where our value comes from. And so we are enough because we're valuable. And then other voices just, we kind of, like for me, sometimes there's just voices and just the chaos and the screaming in our world of all the things. Do you ever, did you have to kind of say, okay, I'm going to not listen to this voice? Or was it a while till you got to that? Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
Like, were you just, okay, because that's exhausting in a way too.
Mm-hmm. It is. Well, so basically in Branson, it's a more Christian environment overall. I mean, as far as like a lot of the shows have gospel music as part of the show, and like there's
Family
like
friendly.
family friendly
Right.
and that kind of thing. And every once in a while, I would go to church in Branson, and I would maybe talk with a friend that was a believer, and I started getting more kind of just tuning my ear back toward the Lord, because again, I was raised in church, but I didn't have a personal relationship with him yet, but it was like he was.
And going to church doesn't
No.
mean we have a personal relationship either,
Right.
right? A lot
But
of
it
people
was,
have that, and yeah.
yes, but I was like hearing more of the word though, and I was hearing his truth still, and those are like, I believe, seeds being planted, and so it was kind of like I was starting to realize there is more. I'm not exactly sure how to tap into that, but I know there's got to be more.
Wow.
Than just all of this stuff that I'm trying to achieve and be, and because as you know, when you're going for those kind of things, even if you get it, it's not a lasting and a fulfilling, peace. You still have that God-shaped void, in you, looking for him to fill, but I didn't really understand that quite yet. So anyway, it was kind of an interesting time because I did recognize, though, that I believed that he had gotten me there. I mean, I was very thankful knowing I really believed this was kind of like a God thing, to even give me this opportunity. So I did that for 5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I kind of just thought, you know what? I'm going to try one more time.
Wow.
For the whole cheerleader thing, because I never let that completely die.
Yeah.
I always kind of had that, I got to try one more time. And this is it. This is definitely it. If I don't make it this time, it's just not meant to be.
You really felt like you would let it go after this last time.
Because I was like, it's definitely a no, a triple no.
3 strikes you're out.
That's right. Like, 3 strikes you're out.
Do we do the baseball? No.
But at this point, I was 24. Is that right? Something like that. 24. And
19, 5 years. Yeah,
yes,
somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there. And had grown so much just by, doing, working on my own, living kind of away from my everything I knew, and kind of just the Lord had grown me.
A lot more independence. Anyone who does that, like go off to college or
experience, like stage experience, all the things.
Yeah.
So this time I didn't tell a soul. I'm like, I'm not telling anybody.
Not telling my town. I'm not telling my college friends.
Oh gosh, no.
What, did really no one know?
No, not even my parents. I didn't tell anybody. Because I was like, this is like it. And if I don't make it, no one has to know.
How long did you have to keep that like quiet? When you, like, are we talking months or
about a month?
Because it was so not too long. But,
yeah.
Okay.
So, but as we already know, spoiler.
I already ruined it at the beginning.
No, but I actually made it this time.
Wow.
And I honestly couldn't believe it. I was like, is this real?
Right.
Because I don't know. I just thought, okay, I guess it really is meant to be. Yeah. And so that began the whole journey of being a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. And it was an awesome experience. I mean, the most awesome things were being able to just travel. I mean, all over the world. And it was an amazing experience. However, if anybody's watched the TV shows, I don't know if you have, there's 2 TV shows about the cheerleaders,
Oh,
on
no, I haven't.
Netflix.
Okay.
Okay. Well, they're great, the shows and everything, but you can see it's very hard. I mean, as far
Probably
as
very
like,
well, even the comparison, like even
right,
the first time around, you said you
yeah,
weren't eating,
right,
eating very little,
yeah.
and then even did you stop comparing? Like
Oh
once you're
no.
on the team, do you stop comparing? Does that get worse?
Well,
Are there people constantly watching how you do things? Can
yes,
you lose your spot?
yes.
Even the fact that the veterans, you
Mm-hmm.
said you're going up against them. So
Mm-hmm.
are they like having to do this every year?
Yes,
Like you're never
every year.
locked in. It seems pretty just a lot of
Mm-hmm.
you traded one kind of pressure of like, yeah, go for it, to I'm sure there were different pressures, like fun experiences, but also just kind of
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to, say on
Yeah.
that, like what
Mm-hmm.
did it put you in a good headspace in a way,
You know, I would say a lot of the time I was not in a good headspace
Mm.
because I did feel like I was under a lot of pressure and under a lot of scrutiny.
Oh, right.
Um, and I feel like that I knew that going in
Mm.
because it's very tough. They're going to give you a lot of critiques
Right.
daily.
Right.
You know,
Oh, wow.
you have a standard where you're weighing in every day
Oh my
and
goodness, wow.
yeah,
Like I weigh myself every day, but that's me.
right.
Me, myself, and I,
Yeah.
not a,
Yeah. Yeah. And
wow.
our weight would be posted for all to see.
Wow, that's a
And
lot of pressure for any person, but
it
like
is.
especially being female and
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
yeah,
And there'd be
wow.
like, weight warning,
Oh my
whatever. Oh yeah.
goodness.
I
Wow.
mean, so there was all of that.
Right.
And then you're very scrutinized. I mean,
I
kind of with a
bet.
fine-tooth comb for
Right.
everything. But I did know that going into it,
Right.
and
Knew what you were
I
signing up
knew
for
what
in
I
a
was
way.
signing up for.
Right.
I knew that it was very, very strict, and
Mm.
they're protecting their brand. I mean, they have a very
Right.
high standard of what
Right.
they're doing, and that's kind of and it's not a ministry. I mean,
Yeah.
this is, you're doing a
Right.
job
Right.
for the
Yeah.
NFL or for the Cowboys, and they tell you right up front what they're
Yeah.
looking for and what's expected of
Tough
you
standards, right? High standards, and right,
and all
right.
of that. But it
So you're
really,
living that day in, day
yeah,
out.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was it like, yes, great experiences, but that almost seems exhausting because it's not just you
Hmm.
kind of checking in with yourself every day. Like, how
Hmm.
am I doing every day?
Hmm.
Where am I at with, just I kind of do that. Like, where am I at today?
Hmm.
How am I feeling? What am I thinking? Whatever. And but that's a lot of external
Hmm.
pressure of
Hmm.
how are you doing today, literally with like a weight
Hmm.
warning and
Hmm. Hmm.
staying up to snuff,
Hmm.
keeping
Hmm.
being able to do all the things and
Yeah.
show up and smile and all of that, and probably know the routines and the but how do you withstand that? And
I was just thinking, I think I was just
and maybe
so,
you didn't, I don't know.
yeah. Well, I was so driven by
Right.
trying to be enough. Like it's
Mm.
almost like I visualize, kind of like those cartoons where they're dangling the carrot.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you're
Yeah.
just doing anything and everything you can to
I
try
want
to
the
get that
carrot.
carrot because you're
Wow.
like, that's what your goal is, and that's what you think you need to achieve,
I'll
and
do whatever it
I will do
takes.
whatever it takes,
Right.
basically.
Right.
And I did a lot of unhealthy things, like I would
Mm.
run and not drink any water. Like I would run in
Mm.
the heat and not drink any water
Mm.
to make weight and things like that. Or I would take
Wow.
diuretics and
Right.
all these things that are just like now, especially years later, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so unhealthy.
Right. Right.
But, I was willing to do
When you
it.
want the carrot. And how
Exactly.
many things do we do like that in life because we want that? And
Yeah.
right. Okay, so fast forward a little bit
Yep.
in your journey.
Mhm.
You were overseas
Mhm.
and something happened while you were there.
Yes. So I got really sick. They were thinking it was an appendicitis,
Mm.
and they had to care flight me over to Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany. And I was in Budapest, Hungary at the time.
Wow.
So
With the team and
with
all.
the team, yes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we were doing USO tours,
Ooh, okay.
shows for the military. And so anyway, I ended up fine. I mean, I made it through it. But when I was recovering in the hospital, I was all by myself because the team was off finishing out the tour.
Right.
And I was over here in Germany, by myself. My whole family, of course, everybody's back in Texas. Yeah. And at the time I was engaged to my current husband now, Jared.
Wow. Your first and current? No.
Yeah. First and only, but
right.
Anyway. And so while I was in the hospital, I had a lot of time to think, and it really was a wake-up call. When you have one of those, I mean, I don't really know how near death I really was, but it felt like it at the time.
Well, they took you to the hospital.
Yeah, people can pass from that. Right. So anyway, I had a lot of time, and I wrote out some things that I felt like I really wanted to focus on from here on out that were more important, And it was really just two things. When it came down to it, it was I want to follow God and I want to serve him. And number two, I want to marry Jared.
Wow.
And yeah. And so
sometimes it seems like God wants to get our attention.
Yeah.
And it might be dramatic like a hospital room, but it might be just sidelining it literally where we have to get away from everything else. Like you were with a group, traveling with a group, probably having a roommate, all the things. But sometimes the daily life, we just, we don't hear, we need to be able to reevaluate. Sometimes it takes something, that medical emergency or something, to be able to sit back and just kind of reevaluate. And wow.
And one little side note, when I was in the hospital, they did this MRI thing.
Yeah.
And they couldn't even get a good read on me because they said I didn't have enough body fat. That's not the case today, but
wow.
But I was so skinny. I had such low body fat that so it just kind of shows you I was barely eating at all. I mean, it was just, I was just so focused on trying to fit the mold and everything. So anyway, made it back home and, I was just had a whole different perspective. Wow. And so I decided, not to try out again. Wanted to finish strong, but I was ready to move on.
Right.
I was ready to move on. And so we did, and we got married. Jared and I got married.
You got one of those done. Yeah. So one of the two things. So,
yes.
And how about the other thing?
Yeah. So it didn't take long, and I told him, I said, I really want us to start going to church. Let's do that. And so we started going to a church in Dallas, and it was really cool because we heard Lee Strobel. You remember him or know him, who he is? And
he was a former atheist who started to kind of, I think his journey began trying to disprove God's existence.
Yes.
And he actually found more proof of God's existence.
Exactly.
And then chose to begin a relationship with Jesus through all of that, trying to disprove that. So you got to hear him at that church then. Wow.
I did. And it made a huge impact on both of us.
Wow.
And it really made us think, and it really made us analyze, where are we really with all of this, And so then fast forward a little bit, and we had our first child, Connor. Well, God used our first child as the catalyst to really get our attention.
God'll do that too. It's all of a sudden there's another person in the mix, and
it's
wow.
And we both of us, Jared and I, both realized, we need help.
Wow.
We need help raising this child. We want him to be raised in the right way. And
Wow.
we were really still honestly living for ourselves and not really for
Mm,
God.
mm,
And it was causing some tension too, because once you have a child,
mhm.
then, you have this precious baby you're trying to raise with different, I'm coming at it my way, he's coming at it his way, we're disagreeing.
Right.
We needed help.
That's a mess, and we're
It's a
talking
mess.
about, like, thrive in the mess and some hope
Mhm.
in the mess, and that's
Absolutely.
messy. Right,
It was
right.
very messy, and we
Mm,
both loved him so much, but we were realizing we really need help.
mm.
We need guidance. We need,
Wow.
strength. We realized within that we were not hitting the mark.
Right, wow.
So that is when we started going to church and really dedicating and really looking
Mm,
into, okay, what does this really mean to give complete surrender of
wow.
our lives? We want to know Jesus
Mm,
personally. We want to surrender everything
wow.
to Him. We want to stop living for ourselves.
Mm.
I'm gonna like get emotional,
Well, and while
but
you're
it
getting
was a
emotional, the whole like, we often talk about sin, that middle letter I is
mm,
what that is. Like,
hmm
sin is just when we choose to live life our way, my way, Lisa's
right,
way,
right,
instead of God's way. And
hmm
you guys were living it Carolyn's way and Jared's
hmm
way. And, sometimes we might come at it like as a couple, but, it still is us choosing our way versus God's way. And so, that is a beautiful way to talk about that, of what you were saying of we didn't want to do that because
hmm
our way does not, it takes us to a place a lot of times that has more consequences or like you were saying, okay, we had a child, there's another life in the mix now
hmm
and where we need help with that. Right. Oh my
yes.
goodness. So how did that all play out? You're like, okay.
So we got baptized together,
Oh wow.
and we made a commitment um to follow Christ and to surrender our
Wow.
life to him.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
it changed everything. I mean, it was now this of
It's
course is
okay to get emotional because that's a big thing because
it
that
is.
gave you hope
It
in the
did.
mess.
It
And
did.
yeah,
And of
wow.
course, it's a process, a sanctification process. It's not like as soon as we came out of the water, then all of a sudden I mean, we
Right.
were a new creation in Christ, but yet now we have to walk it out and, let Him prune us and, test us in the fire and
We're always growing. Right,
always
right.
growing and learning.
And
But
life isn't perfect. That's
no,
why
yeah.
we're talking about messes because life is
Yep,
not perfect. It never will
exactly.
be, but we don't walk through it alone. Like even
Mm,
hearing your story and some of the hope it gives and
mhm.
all of that and
Yeah, because when Jared and I met and married, we were so in love and everything like that. But yeah,
mm,
when hard things start hitting,
right.
like how do we raise this child? Like how do we run this business?
Mm,
How do I, keep I, went back to work as a performer and I had really crazy hours and I mean there was lots of stuff.
right, right.
And again,
Juggling.
yeah,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, we were still really looking out for number 1. We weren't really looking at, "God, what do you want?" And
Mm.
then also being, like, thinking about the other more than ourselves,
Mm.
I mean,
It
maybe
was
we
life together, but still taking care of your needs. Right. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think we knew even that we were doing that really as
Mm.
much as far
Right.
as, like, because 'cause you're thinking, "Oh, of course I love him, but
Yeah.
this is what I want."
Right.
And it's not that you have to give up everything you want, but it was just like there was no understanding at that point
Mm.
yet of what it really looks like to be surrendered to Christ, like really listening to Him, like letting Him guide us and direct us to, like, love each other
Yeah.
well. It was still a very, like you said, in the middle of sin, there's that I, it was very
Yeah.
self centered, And so when we did come up out of the water and the main thing that was changed was that it was
Mm.
like we may not know exactly how to walk that out quite yet, but we know that's what we want and that's what
We're choosing.
we're
Right.
choosing that
Right.
you know
How did all of this? So you enter marriage and you still have some voices of I'm not enough.
hmm
Like there's marriage, there's being a mom.
hmm
I know in you have the voices of parents, and
Mhm.
then you and I really got to know each other more after I lost my mom, after you lost your dad tragically.
Mhm.
And those voices of when other people have spoken into our lives and
Mhm.
things were not enough, and just how that plays into who we are and identity.
Mhm.
Just what are some of your thoughts on some of that, the journey through life? Because now you have you literally encourage others with their identity, but it's also a daily choice to
Mm.
see. I know I see that with things that you share and that we've talked about, of just it's a choice each day, an intentional choice to
Mhm.
choose to know how valuable we are because of who God made us to be,
Mhm.
and that we are enough. But what are some of the, those are different situations and voices of, wife, mom, daughter, and,
Yeah.
and other things like even working, an
Right.
employee or something.
Yes, yes. Well, you know how I said I was always looking for people to tell me who I
Hmm.
am and if I'm worth anything and all of that. So once I surrendered my life to the Lord and really
Mm.
became to know him and everything, it's really through the word. It's like
Yeah.
then when I started studying the word and knowing what he said in his love letter to us, the
Right.
word
Right.
is where I really had the transformation
Wow. Wow.
because I didn't even really know. I mean, even though I was raised up in church,
Yeah.
um, I didn't know a lot of the word, and I for
Mm.
sure wasn't studying it and reading it myself or listening to it or any of that for a lot of my life.
Yeah.
I knew bits and pieces and things, but now it had come alive to me,
Wow.
you
Yeah.
know? So,
Yeah.
like, then when I would read it, I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's just for me.
Wow. Yeah.
I needed to hear that.
But
That's
I've read it,
perfect.
and I feel like it's for me too. And that's the beauty of it. We all read
Exactly.
it, and you can read it at different times, and it hits you different times. Like I literally
Exactly.
will even put like a little date sometimes,
Yes.
like and I'll be like, "Oh, you know what? That wasn't long after my mom died, or
Mhm.
that was when not long after I became a mom,
Mhm.
and so I look back at that, but then you read it differently different times in
Mhm.
your life.
Mhm.
Oh, I was newly married then, or
Mhm.
now I'm 2 decades into being married. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Oh,
So
yeah, it's living.
wow.
It's a living word. I
And
mean,
it
it
gives you life because you
Yep.
have such a joy and are so radiant of because you do know you're enough. And that's a
Mhm.
beautiful thing. And even if we sometimes hear those little niggling lies, I keep coming back to that because it's not always a big lie that's loud. It is that
Right.
quiet little,
Yes. Mhm.
but you're not enough. Like,
Mhm.
are we ever really yelled at in our world of you're not enough? Maybe some people are, but it's those little things that are in our mind that,
Mhm.
and when we kind of are looking at, what God says about who we are, it does change
Yeah.
that so much. So, wow. So you're getting into, God's word, and
Mhm.
you're like, okay, that's me. That's for me. That's who I am. And did you ever feel like, you get married and sometimes we're like, okay, he's my go-to for my affirmation,
Right.
also, and I know I've thought about that sometimes with Rick. He is not my go-to for all the things. He's an amazing encourager. Like he's my rock, my person,
Yes.
but really God is the one I have to go to
Yes.
for that because he
Mhm.
is my anchor. Rick won't even always be there. Someday I might not always be there for him someday,
Mhm.
we don't know how long we're not promised tomorrow, so not
Right.
to be morbid, but like I did learn that after my mom,
Yes.
even of our encouraging people might not always be there, but
Mhm.
God is, so yeah, fast forward to any other,
Mhm.
enoughs or not enoughs or
So I thought about the main scripture that just kind of like blew my mind and transformed me was Psalm 139.
oh my goodness, I think I wrote that down here. I gotta
Oh,
see what
really?
verse.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
I opened it up
the
to
whole
that.
thing is
The whole
amazing.
thing is amazing. And,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people may have heard the verse about from that says, you are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of many, many things in this passage or in this psalm that is amazing. But I didn't know this or hear this or read this
Yeah.
until, I was a mom. I mean, I
Mm.
hadn't heard any of this, right?
Wow. That's
Until
a lot of life
it
to not
is.
know that. Right,
I
right.
did not know that. I mean,
Mm.
in my growing up and experiences in the showbiz world or whatever,
Yeah.
um, I was always thinking, I would never say I was fearfully and wonderfully made because here's what's wrong with me.
Wow.
This, and this. And, you
And
know,
you hit kind of like for some people, making it into an occupation where it's very like you have to have physical talent and certain things and stuff. Some people think, oh, this person has it all made because
mhm,
they do whatever.
right,
They
right.
invented this, they made this, they got this accomplishment, but you still didn't know that truth of
Hmm.
fearfully, wonderfully made and
Hmm.
still looking around for that validate me kind of in a way. Like, who do you say I
Yes,
am?
exactly.
And then all of a sudden you know what God says you are. So, how did that change life? Like, that's a very practical tip, even of like reading that kind of truth and taking that in. But how did that change life as a mom
Oh my gosh. Well, it just blew my mind because I
and for
just
you just in general,
yeah, it just made me feel like, okay, the Lord God
Mm,
Almighty
mm,
created me and all of
mm.
us, and this is what He says.
Right.
And He has a purpose so much bigger and more, important than looking a certain way. I mean,
Yeah.
his ways are so much higher than our ways. And, the whole psalm talking about how he
Mm,
knows, our going and our coming and all these things. He so cares
mm.
about us. Like, and I'm just thinking, but God, again, all the things that I think negatively about myself, but this, but that, but this, but that. And, but you read that enough times and you just
Mm.
feel how much he loves you
Right.
and how he created you. He knit you together in your mother's womb.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like it's very, very powerful once you start to actually that goes from here to here because
Mm.
you're accepting that and realizing, oh wow.
Yeah.
It puts everything in perspective really quickly. I mean,
Yeah.
once you get it, because you're like,
Mm.
okay, I may not be the right fit for this job or this role or
Right.
whatever it may be, but that doesn't change my identity,
Mm.
right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
and he has a plan. I mean, I look back over my life and I just think about how he directed my steps even when I didn't even really know him that personally yet. I mean, I
Yeah.
believed in him, but I didn't even and he was
Right.
still making a way for me. He carried me through the door. I
Mm.
mean,
And
it's
there's a
pretty
difference with the believing, like, sure, you're God, fine.
exactly.
And, but then really internalizing that because literally like you said the God of almighty but like the God who made the universe and then like he cares
Yeah.
about me and one of the verses I think of is he literally knows the number of hairs on our head. Like
Yes.
if anyone knows that it would be me or you because we
Right.
do our
Right.
hair each day, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Well, I try to with naturally curly hair but I really don't care. It just kind of wants to do what it does. And but I don't know how many hairs. Like
Mhm.
I literally, when I wash my hair, I've, there's going to be hair that falls out. Am I going to be like, okay, minus 14 strands? No, but God knows that. Like He cares that much about me and
Right.
about you. Like
Yes.
if that doesn't scream, I love you and I care for you and
Mhm.
identity of who we are.
Mhm.
Okay, but now you're, um, at this stage in life, when you hear doubts, like, do you
Mhm.
still hear that? Or is life just, okay,
Mhm.
I never hear, I'm not enough? And what do you do with those? Well, it's just like a practical something to encourage someone today in that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, because
Where you
That's
don't end up in the under the covers with the Haagen-Dazs, like, okay, I'm not good enough. You know what I mean? And
I do, because it is a continual bombardment from the world.
right.
I mean, we're not going to get away from that as
There's
far
voices everywhere.
it,
Right,
it
right.
they are.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something that for the rest of my life, I'm
Mm.
going to be, putting my armor on, and I'm going to be deflecting those fiery darts that are coming from
Mm.
the enemy, trying to, take me down, and lies,
Right.
and, being deceived into thinking that, well, maybe I read that wrong, or maybe God really
Right.
doesn't feel that way, or whatever. um, for me, this is very simple, but whenever I start to get into a doubt about something like that, that I really know deep down is truth, but I'm
Mm.
starting to get fuzzy because I'm listening maybe too many voices of the world or
Which
whatever.
is so easy, like social media, just
Oh,
all
yeah.
the things, TV, whatever it is, like any program,
Oh, yeah.
movies, show, whatever. It is of, okay. And even the comparison, like
Yep,
not choosing not to do that,
absolutely.
but
So what I do, and I do it often, is I have my most favorite thing is to worship. So
mm.
I will
And you
go.
do sing. You sing
I do.
beautifully.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Love
So
your singing.
thank you. So I will go and I will turn on the worship music.
And what does that mean? Like when you mean worship music, what,
Yeah. So any song that
Mhm.
is praising God, that is talking
Mm.
about God, that is lifting up the name of Jesus, that is
Mm.
proclaiming his truth. Um, because if I get into that time of just putting my eyes on him, back
Yeah.
on him,
Yeah.
worshiping him, and what's so amazing about him, I'm probably going to get emotional again, but
I
is
really need to keep here's a
yeah.
napkin.
Yes.
It's like-
When I this just kind of shows to me the heart of our Father, is that
Mm.
when I turn my eyes on him and I begin to worship him,
Yeah.
expressing my love to him, he doesn't just take it all and not give anything back.
Mm.
It's like we start to worship him, and then he just can't help but to just love us back.
Wow.
And so it's like in that
Wow.
moment,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel his presence. I feel his love. I feel him filling my cup back up,
Mm.
and it's like okay, you were getting off and getting distracted into these voices of the world, but what does your
Mm.
Father say?
Right.
You know?
Wow. That's
So,
powerful.
I mean,
Yeah. And I also want to throw out there's something that has helped me on days when I feel lower.
mhm.
When I'm not feeling enough, I literally will try to think of is someone else who needs encouragement
Yes, that's
because
good.
and you do that. You are a big
Well,
encourager
you do.
and well
You're an awesome encourager.
we're not comparing. No. Here we'll just like fist bump that we both do. High five, fist bump. But I see you do that with other people, and that is powerful because when we might not feel like that enough, just pouring into someone else, and it takes
Mhm,
the attention off us,
mhm,
whether
mhm.
you're listening to worship music and it's taking your attention off you and
Yes.
looking at
Mhm,
at God instead, and
mhm.
or looking at someone else who really might be having a tough time, and getting
Yes.
the attention off me really
Yes.
kind of helped. You even referred earlier, like I don't know if it exactly fit, but like the pride,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
sometimes like we need to lean into a hard feeling,
mhm.
but just not stay there
Exactly.
and really try to, put
Mhm,
that focus somewhere else. I
mhm.
know we could talk for a million hours, but I do want to just ask one final question of what would you tell 18-year-old Carolyn
Mm,
about identity?
mhm. Wow, that's a great
And
question.
anyone else, like, walking through it, like, there's
Yes.
a lot of
Yes.
takeaways of, ways to, really, like, looking to God for who made us, and
Mhm,
even, the people in your world, your husband being encouraging, whatever. But
mhm,
what would you tell someone who's like, I am just, you don't know me. You might be enough, Carolyn. You might be enough, Lisa. But
mm.
really, anyone is because of who God is. Like he's a part of this equation, of who we are.
Yeah. I would tell them that the God of the universe, the God that created all,
Hmm.
Number one, he's love. He is love.
Mm.
And he loves them so dearly, like his, precious child. And he sent his son to die for them, and he
Mm.
wants them to be close. He wants to love them closely, personally.
Yeah.
He wants to hide you under his wings. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. He knew you before the foundations of the earth. I mean, he knew and saw and knit you together in your mother's womb. He
Mm.
has a plan for you, to prosper you, not to harm you. He sings over you, like it says in
Yeah.
Zephaniah 3:17.
One of my favorites. Yes,
Yes.
yes.
You know, just you can think about the person you might love the most.
Mm.
God loves you 10 million times more than
Right.
that.
Right.
And
Right.
he wants to know you personally, and he has a plan for you, and you're valuable,
Mm.
and he's got so much for you. And the things of this world are fleeting,
Mm.
and he'll walk you through it all. He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. And he'll carry you through when you need to be carried, and you are enough because he made you.
Yeah.
And he loves you.
Mm.
And so any of these voices that are trying to come and tell you any different,
Yeah.
it's just not true. And
Yeah.
he wants to show you that. He wants you to know that you know that you know that you know that that's the truth. And that he wants to know you and be with you forever.
Mm.
Not just here on this earth, but then forever in heaven. And he has an incredible plan and future for you. So look to him, and he'll give you the God confidence to
Yeah.
keep going and believing and trusting in him, and um, just realize that through him you are more than enough.
Mm. Wow. Very powerful. And as I was hearing you, a lot of what you were saying are directly from God's word. And they are some of those powerful, encouraging words. And I couldn't help but think of, it almost feels like you're going back and giving 18-year-old Carolyn a hug and saying all of
Mhm.
that to her.
Yeah.
And friend, I really hope that you've been encouraged by, now I'm going to get emotional, by Carolyn's story, because you are enough because of who God made you to be and how much he loves you. Everything that Carolyn just said so beautifully. And I appreciate you even sharing, it's not going to church that brought this about. You had some knowledge, head knowledge, and maybe you have some knowledge in your head about who God is or who Jesus is. But it took Carolyn choosing one day, and me choosing one day, saying, I believe that in my heart. And if you want that relationship with Jesus today and that hope that he gives, you can choose that today and just call out to him and talk with him about wanting to begin that relationship with him and choosing to go his way instead of our own way, because our way pretty much stinks, leaves. But thank you for tuning in today. Really hope this has been an encouragement to you. And I hope you'll join us next time on Thrive in the Mess.